Um, so yeah, my name is Jason Piperberg. I am a local illustrator, comic book artist, and I've been working professionally since about 2012. And I started with John a group in Lancaster City called the Lancaster Illustration Guild. And yeah, so that's is John here? I see him. I thought I saw him.
Is my mic working?
No, it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So so John and I started a group called the Lancaster Illustration Guild. Like 2 years ago now, and we have a lot of PCA&D alum that are there. That we do like monthly meetups and stuff. So yeah, that's my quick little intro.
Yeah, hi, my name is John Salvino. I'm a Lancaster local illustrator. I'm coming at the illustration in particular from more of a kind of a, I guess like a side hustle kind of a situation. I work professionally at a sculpture foundry, so that's my arts day job kind of thing. I think it might be more beneficial for Jason and I to kind of go in from the perspective of like a little bit earlier career artists. So we're, I think both of us a little bit into the like the freelance side of things, and I've done a little bit of trade shows and then working for the foundry as like a studio artist kind of situation. So in order to not like do a lot of like overlapping content, I think it would be good for us to focus on that side of things and kind of go over like our transition out of art school, our experience there, and then into kind of this like earlier stage of our careers, and then what we've done as artists in the freelance comic space in Jason's case, and the like self-publishing comics in my space, and the like trade shows and that kind of thing that a lot of younger artists have been getting into. So Jason, did you want to kind of go over your kind of career background and a little bit of your portfolio?
Yeah, so I've got, let me pull this up real quick. So I've done a variety of different projects. Most of them have been small press. Probably the best known one is Raising Dion, which is a, if you haven't seen it, it's a Netflix show now. So the Netflix show is based off of the comic. And I did this back in, I guess, 2014, 2015. Does everyone see that right now? Is the screen sharing working? Sorry.
It is.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, cool.
It's working on mine.
So yeah, this was like one of the first full-length comics that I had done out of college. And I worked with a writer, and he gave me a script and everything. And the Netflix series is a lot different, but this was like a huge learning experience for me. But I still feel like it's probably some of my better work, or at least my better known work. And you know, this one's a more recent piece. This for Jules Verne exhibition that I did for a company called Hire an Illustrator, which is like a listing service. It's kind of like a secondary portfolio site that's been really useful for me to like grow some of my freelance work. This was for a board game, and this is what I'm working on now. So this is a series called Patriot Tales, which is like kids traveling back in time to meet George Washington and like other historical figures. It's for the Valley Forge Tourism Board. And then you got some Spider-Man fan art, and then this is my Spaceman Bloater, which is like my creator-owned thing, which is kind of like a passion project. And then this is some Ninja Turtles art, and I did a Mega Man cover. So that's kind of that's sort of a quick overview of what my work looks like. I would say I started out, I had the good fortune of my mom basically after college being like, you can come live with me. So I got I didn't have to pay rent really. So it was allowing me to like focus a lot on just skill building and kind of getting acquainted with what the business world with this is like, and like learning contracts and like making mistakes without being like, if I make this mistake, I'm going to not be able to pay rent or eat. So yeah, it's been an interesting few years, but I didn't really start hitting a stride of like, this is my only thing until about 2 or 3 years ago. So yeah.
And so that's
John, if you're
your full-time thing, right? It's doing freelance.
Yeah. So I've been basically doing this full time. Like I always thought of myself doing it full time, but I was making like $9,000, so I don't know if that really counts. But I was doing it full time, basically from like 2017 until now. It's been pretty steady work. And hiring an illustrator actually had a lot to do with that, where I signed up for that, and then that broadened my scope, and people found me a lot easier, and I started getting hired for gigs. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll do a little screen share, go through some of my work. So I went to college for animation, actually. I studied just basic like 3D animation, but then I ended up after college going into sculptural work. I actually found a job at a foundry where we do like fine art bronze casting. So is everybody able to see my screen sharing here? There should be like a...
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I want to go through a couple of process shots of some things that I've done in that career. So I didn't anticipate going into a career in sculpture after studying animation, but the opportunity arose and I went with it. I did an internship and then was hired on as an employee. And through that job, I've really been able to use all the art fundamentals that I learned as an animator and in my own like illustration hobby training. And it just amazed me how much I guess cross-pollination and similarity there were in the different career paths there. So this is, I'm gonna show 3 sequence drawings here, just a real rough sketch, a more refined sketch, and then a cast in bronze installed sculpture. And this was something that we did at the foundry where I work. So it was my job in this project to create those initial sketches and then help with the molding of the clay, and then the actual, like everything from rubber molding to lost wax casting and metal finishing. So you can kind of see the process of, we go back to our sketches, just real basic line art, figure drawing stuff all the way through to a finished product. And this was, again, like, as a person who trained in animation, I didn't anticipate going into this career path at all, but it really has allowed me to, I guess, like refine my art skills, learn technical skills that I never thought I would really have access to: welding, metal finishing, wax sculpting, rubber mold making, all kinds of technical skills involved with sculpture. And then those skills have allowed me to kind of implement them back into my other artistic pursuits. So throughout my career at the foundry, learning these sculptural skills, I've also been practicing as an illustrator part-time, doing self-published comic work and trade shows. So I'll show a few examples of that work. So my self-published comic project is called She Walks with a Giant, and that should be loading up here shortly. There's another photo of the installed D-Day sculpture. And so these are just a few examples of my illustration work. Again, this is a creator-owned comic project. I also do a kind of relatively full slate of commission work and some other like project development work as my schedule permits. So my work in sculpture then has allowed me to kind of grow this skill set and keep this creator-owned project active in my life, which is something that I really prioritize. The reason I didn't pursue a career in animation, I'm sorry, I moved ahead a little bit on my slides. The reason I didn't pursue a career in animation straight out of school is because of the nature of the animation industry being very like feature film focus thing or effects focused career paths, and I wasn't particularly interested in either of those. I was very interested in the storytelling aspect of it, and I was also very interested in telling stories that I had already been working on for several years at the time I was in college. So I decided to pursue a career that would let me implement those stories in a way where I would own them and not have to produce them to be owned by a studio. And I guess the most efficient way I saw to do that was to create them as comics. So I, used a lot of the skills that I learned in my animation training to transition into comic making, and then also implement those skills in my career in sculpture. That also led to another kind of unexpected career path, which I guess is kind of the theme of anything I'm presenting here, is that like you can definitely take advantage of unexpected career paths as an artist. So I have worked on several commissions for like model making for films, and I do model making workshops and events at trade shows and anime conventions, things like that, where I'll do hour-long presentations and be featured as a guest. This is one I did at a KatsuCon. I've done a whole bunch of other East Coast conventions. And then here's some other photos of me set up at various trade shows. This one's Anime New York City.
We can't see your presentation.
Oh, let me see if my screen share is up.
We're looking at your the trade show pictures, but in your folder.
Okay, here, let me see.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was me. Was it just like that?
There we go. This should correct it here.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, so this is just another example of like taking the multiple income streams approach, I guess would be the best way of describing it. Career paths that I didn't anticipate getting into going out of college, but now that I'm kind of in the working world as an artist, having the combined jobs of like working at the Foundry where we do the castings, and then doing trade shows on the side, having the self-published comic, doing commission work such as model making or private art commissions, and being able to combine those all into what I have found to be a pretty satisfying art career. Again, I'm not too far out of college, so I'm still fairly early in my art career, but I feel like the path that I've taken so far has been definitely more varied than I would have ever thought it would be. And I feel pretty satisfied with the amount of skill sets and people I've been exposed to, and just things I've been able to learn taking the path that I've taken. And I just want to encourage anybody who's really like on that cusp of like about to set off to like not plan too much to get locked into a career path unless you are absolutely committed and devoted to that, and you know a whole lot about that industry. Because frankly, I didn't know a lot about the animation industry when I was studying animation. I knew a lot about the art of animation, but I'm glad I didn't lock myself into a career path that I probably would have regretted in the long run. And I feel the path I've taken has been pretty interesting, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah, just really quick adding on to that, and then maybe we can open it up to some questions. I similarly, like when I was in college and like going through that, I always kind of was like, I want to work for Marvel or I want to work for DC. And I really like, I haven't done that. Like I've tried to, I've sent page samples. I know an editor or two from each one, but the further I get in my career, the more I kind of feel like maybe that's not quite the aspect of comics that I'm cut out for, which isn't to say that I don't want to do comics, but comics are more than, people in tights being superhero-y people, like that's not, it's a storytelling medium. So it's like John said, like, don't feel like you have to get locked in or that it's not what you're not the kind of artist that you wanted to be, or, something like that. But yeah, maybe we can open it up to some questions if anybody.
Yeah, I think we should definitely take the time we have left and do a Q&A, considering your session didn't have theirs.
Yeah.
Hi, I have a question for Jason and John.
Okay.
How do you go about pricing your work as comic artists? That's something I'm interested in.
Okay. I had some early experiences where I was like, I don't know how to price this, because everyone is always coming to you and they're like, can you do the book for like $100? And I'm like, no. But then I don't, and it's because it's like way too much work. So what I've done, because I get so many inquiries about that, is I have like a PDF document, like an actual with examples and like prices, and but in terms of like, and I just send that out to the client. I'm like, here, take, let me know. And a lot of times I don't hear back from them. But in terms of like choosing your price, it's a variety of different factors, right? You want to look at sort of what the industry standard would be, which for a lot of people, it's like a lot of companies, it would be something like if you're doing $200 a page for pencils, and then you kind of work up from there. So if you do, like for me personally, for fully colored and lettered page, like the whole thing, I usually quote that around $4.75 a page, because I'm doing the work of like what would traditionally be like 5 people. So it's a personal thing, right? Like I'm not the fastest person either. So I have people that I know who are comfortable charging less because they can get the pages done so quickly. I guess with anything, when you're pricing, you wanna like do a gut check, right? You wanna think like, how much do I want to do this project, and how much is that worth to me, right? So if somebody's going to come to you and they're going to say, I want you to do this superhero comic, and it's like an urban, it's like, it's gritty, and like we're doing it like down reels, and you're like, I don't really do superheroes, but I'm hard pressed for cash. How much money do you have like in your budget? If they're going to give you $500 a page, you might be able to do it, right? But if they're going to give you like $20 a page, you might be better off just focusing on your own work, and like, because any work that you're going to do for free, unless it's for like a good cause or whatever, save free work for yourself, because you're gonna. So I mean, I don't know if that answers your question at all. Okay, yeah. I could talk about pricing a lot, so I don't want to ramble continuously.
Yeah, it's a really big topic in especially like freelance comics, because there's not just some official guide you can look to that says, here's how much you should charge. I mean, there are several sources that are almost that, but I think the best way to go about it, especially when you're like getting your foothold and like you really have like absolutely no bearing, is to measure, like really like get data, figure out how long it takes you to illustrate a page of 4 panels with X amount of characters, and figure out how long it takes you to ink, to color, to do all the tasks that need to be done, break down that time versus that work, and figure out, how much, basically, like if you need this much money to live in a month and you can get this much work done, like how much do you need to charge for that? There's kind of a mathematical formula to it. And then compare that to what you see from other sources, your kind of like market rate idea. I think that would be the way to start going about that if you are absolutely like lost on pricing.
Yeah, I would also just add quickly, like as artists, I think a lot of us, especially when we're starting out, have this inclination of, I'm not worth that much, or like, I don't deserve the money, right? And bottom line, if somebody's asking you to do the work, you're worth the money, right? So, I mean, if you're just starting out and this is, if you have never done a comic before, or, you don't feel like you're being honest with your work, and you're saying like, I'm not quite at this level. Okay, maybe you're not, if somebody's asking you to do full color and letter, maybe you're not starting out of the gate at $4.75 a page, right? Maybe you're starting like $2.50 a page, right? But don't do like full color and letter for like a 22-page book for like $50 a page, because you're just going to regret. So, and kind of going off of that, which I didn't see the whole presentation, like all the presentations today, but like never do anything without a contract, never start any work without a contract, never, that's like 100%, like do not do that at all, unless it's like a client that you have a good relationship with, and you already know that they're competitive, or, whatever. Even then it's iffy, but like, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to pipe in that I'm not an artist. I'm a writer. Okay. And there have been a few times. It's important to communicate clearly how long it's going to take. because there's been times where we've agreed on an hourly, and then 5 hours later they're like, oh, I thought that was going to take like an hour. That's why I agreed to that hourly rate.
Right.
And so that gets a little awkward. So definitely do communicate your expectations as well as getting the communication about their expectations.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, is when you're dealing with an hourly rate, like a lot of times I usually do flat rate rather than hourly rate unless it's something like character designs or something. And in that sense, because you're dealing with something that's very iterative, you're going to have a lot of different stuff. A lot of times with that, I will be like, we have a limited number of revisions. So they're not just continuous. And I just say like, look, the more revisions you ask for, the more expensive it's going to be. And that often keeps them from, making me do revisions until I can't be alive anymore. Yeah.
Are invoices also valid, or is that more of a other kind of industry thing?
Meaning like, yeah, I mean, you want to send invoices for sure. So what I normally do is when I first get a job offer, I will first and foremost be like, what are the specifics of this? Whether it's a comic or an illustration or whatever, what are you going to be using this for? What are you, all of this kind of stuff. Like, get as many details as you possibly can, and then kind of regurgitate that back to them in an email and be like, I just want to make sure this is what we're talking about. These are the outlines. Do you have any additions or anything like that? If they say, no, that's it, then you say, great, I'm going to work up a contract. And then what I do is I kind of put like an estimate at the top, right? So I'll have like an estimate table that says, $10,000 or whatever it would be, right? I don't always get $10,000 jobs. That's a good day. But I'll get that. And then I'll put that table at the top, and then I have like the working terms for it, and you just kind of fill it out. If it's a buyout, that's like where you're kind of surrendering all of your rights, and that's when you want to just shoot for the stars in terms of money. Like, if they want you to do like a rebranding of an entire huge company, then like you're asking for a lot more money than if it's somebody who wants you to do a private commission for their house. So even if it was the same image, it would be more money. But, yeah. So yeah, send invoices. That's good.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of good free invoicing programs out there that do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not an artist, so maybe it's quick for an artist to do.
Well, I mean, I think it depends. Like I kind of just have fallen into this habit of like having a template in a Word doc. Like it's
right.
Which
That's
is probably
easy.
It's probably not the most efficient way to do it, but I just haven't pushed myself to make the switch. But I do track my hours for basically everything I do, just so I have a good idea of like. And with comics, I'm often like, well, I'm over budget on everything. So, but yeah, it's you got to stay on top of it. So.